Welcome, Dr. James Beckett, Sports Card Insights recap issue from episodes 299 up through 318. I do this exactly every 4 weeks, but there are episodes each day. And then generally I'll do a couple shorter ones on the weekend to tide you over. Usually I drop a couple on Saturday and then leave Sunday for a day of rest, or you could catch up if you miss some, whatever you want to do. Thanks sponsors: Topps Panini Upper Deck, Heritage Auctions, Huggins & Scott Auctions, Mike's Stadium Sports Cards, Burbank Sports Cards, ComC.com, and Beckett Media, Beckett Grading, Beckett Authentication. Several of them got strong coverage, and some of them I need to do some episodes about some of the others that have not been covered for a while. So again, thank you, sponsors. 299 was a Dueling Questions with Nick Matovich of Panini, and I really enjoyed going back and forth. There's 4 Dueling Questions episodes in these last 4 weeks. I spread them out a little bit, but some of the people like them because they've got a few questions they've accumulated, and it makes for an interesting back and forth. It's hard to summarize, though. You just have to listen because the questions can be all over the place, and I enjoy the spontaneity, and I think the guests do as well because they're on the hot seat as well. 299 A and B were the weekend episodes on negotiating tips, and I decided to break them into buying and selling. And no big surprise, the one on buyer negotiating tips was more popular than the seller negotiating tips. There clearly are more buyers out there than there are sellers, but getting into the seller psychology is there's some value there. 300 was the other recap from before. 301 was Jeff Heckman from Topps, dealing with what Topps is doing, e-commerce, and doing some great stuff, really innovating, pushing the limits. Thank you, Jeff, for coming on and sharing some of Topps' e-commerce initiatives that seem to be working. 302 was Rich and I talking about the first Canadian version of the Donruss product, which was a kind of a mainstream set. The Beckett Publications was U.S. based, but 85 Donruss leaf with the little leaf on the front was kind of stretched the rules a little bit when it came out. Rich and I reminisced about that. And 303 was the then and now about the internet. Always enjoy talking to Tanner Jones, and so we focused our attention on the effects of the internet because I obviously predate the internet, but so does he. So we can remember the before, and I think he did some dial-up stuff in the beginning, and so he's a generation younger than me. 304 was Dueling Questions with Ken Capel. Again, Ken, you remember Ken, he's the insurance guy. He's frequently sent me thoughtful feedback via email, drjamesbeckett@gmail.com. Just want to reward people that give thoughtful feedback, and I enjoyed. So we've had a couple of episodes. So that's what he gets for being. I don't like non-specific praise or criticism, but if you've got a suggestion and it's thoughtful, I certainly consider it. And again, enjoyed going back and forth with Ken. He's now been on a couple episodes. 304 A and B were the weekend episodes. Greatest Generation was really a little bit of a pre-tribute because my dad and my father-in-law are both very much alive at 95 and 93, and really a representative of this Greatest Generation. Many of their peers have gone before them and have passed away, and like many their age, they had significant military service that was active, and so we've had a lot of deaths of Hall of Famers lately, but thankfully my dad and my father-in-law are doing well. Not saying I'm going to deal with them every year in September when their birthdays come around, but it's nice to remember just that generation, and it really was the Greatest Generation. I'm a baby boomer. 304B was 53 Topps Baseball. Looked at the whole set, but initiated by Collectibles Big Splash, the Entity Collectible. It's a fractional platform for owning out of reach memorabilia and cards. And so a 53 mantle in a PSA 10 is pretty astounding. They're 2, but I've never seen all the 53 Topps I've handled. I haven't seen a 10 of anything, much less a mantle. Or a Maze, who's the other key guy in that set. I think finding a 10 Maze would be extreme. It's a higher number. And you wonder, why is Willie Mays a high number when he's such a big star? He actually didn't play in 53. And as for my tribute to Cy Berger, Willie and Cy were buddies. Willie did go on to be the MVP, but that was in 54. In 53, he was in the military service. And a trivia question that'll pop up that I didn't get a chance to put in my tribute to Whitey Ford. Who's bigger, Willie Mays or Whitey Ford? And the answer is neither. They were both the same height and weight, which is pretty amazing. 305 was the origin story for Steve Grad, Beckett Authenticated, does the autographs, and maybe more famously, Pawn Stars, regular featured appraiser and all-around smart guy. So had a lot of fun talking about my background back in the 70s when I completed some sets. I thought, well, I'll just try to get them autographed. And there were no really authenticators other than some guys out there that knew Mark Jordan was around, so I could show them to Mark Jordan. But generally, when the money was lower, there weren't a lot of forgeries other than the typical secretarial stuff that's well known now, but wasn't then. 306 was the first of 2 episodes I did with Ryan Kruger. Ryan, again, a thoughtful response via email as a listener. And we talked about how he had, I'll lump both of them. He's a professional money manager, very conservative, and he attributes some of his sports card experience from back as a preteen to preparing him for having a company and being able to give sound advice and handle people's investments. And he has a certain position that he expressed about margin and other kinds of peace of mind type investing that he expressed it in the other episode later. 307 was Pete Calderon. I like Pete. I knew Pete from back when in one of his previous gigs. So he's had a long and great story in the hobby. Maybe if I knew it, I forgot it, but I just didn't. He got cards from his grandpa, and that is so cool. I got stuff from my dad that was saved by my grandmother and grandfather, but so his natural affinity for e-cards and candy cards, that was super cool. So I'm learning something when I'm listening as well. 308 was Dueling Questions 3.0 with Rich. I've created a monster here because Rich is already working on Dueling Questions 4.0. He's adding more questions, so I got to come up with some more questions for him. 309 was the then and now that Rich and I did about Pacific trading cards. And Mike Kramer has had a very serious health scare, and he's my contemporary, no longer in the hobby, but the founder and owner of Pacific Trading Cards, just an all-around amazing guy. Wishes to Mike, who I think very recently was in the hospital and getting treatments, and I think it was a rare kind of cancer that was not curable but treatable. And so again, thoughts and prayers to my buddy Mike Kramer. 309 A and B were the outtakes on Hobby Hotline. I enjoy being one of the panelists on Hobby Hotline, and when that's done, I think there were a couple parts in there, little snippets that I've not dealt with. And rather than me doing a whole new episode, I thought that there's a 5 or 7 minute or 10 minute run where I'm talking or I'm interacting with one of the call-ins, and would be helpful as I'm putting together these 1,000 plus or minus episodes that are my oral history. And so and the interesting one was that the junk gem era, the PSA 10s, and I'm not picking on PSA because there may be some junk gem BGS 9.5s. On some of these newer cards, it's pretty easy to get a gem mint grade. And so it's taken for granted. And if there's a lot of them, then some of these, it didn't used to be that you'd ever be expecting to find a gem mint card at a value that would be less than what it costs to grade it. But if you get an oversupply, that can't happen. 310, best first baseman not in the Hall of Fame. That was motivated by another listener question who said, hey, why don't you talk about Steve Garvey? And I thought, as a Hall of Famer, and I thought, let me bat that around with Rich and see what he thinks about Steve Garvey and some of the other contemporaries and others that are not in the Hall of Fame, and the distinction between not in the Hall of Fame and not in the Hall of Fame yet. So mainly dealing with retired players, but as somebody they surprisingly get in the Hall of Fame, they can certainly be a recipient of a bump in their card value. 311 was Mike Chark. Very opinionated. He's Canadian, veteran collector, and we go way back in terms of his interview with my old company. And so he had written in, and we just got on a roll, and he questions whether this is a hobby and what the real meaning of dealer is. So again, you'd have to listen to it to figure it out, but the time went by quickly. 312, Dueling Questions, Steve Grad. Again, he has a radio background, so I really felt like he was interviewing me, but had a lot of fun with Steve. 313 was the first episode. I've got something else teed up with Derek Grady, who just has he's at Heritage. He has an amazing hobby pedigree. You'd have to listen to so his origin story. He's been serially with some of the biggest and best brands in the industry, and very well respected for his knowledge. And like I said, he's the very key guy at Heritage. Enjoyed talking to him. 314 was the second episode with Ryan Kruger on just seeing how a professional money manager looks at the hobby and discretionary quote unquote investing, which is another issue. 314A was the types of flippers. Again, the point I'm making is that not some type of flipper is actually good and increases the liquidity of the hobby. If somebody's roaming a show and they see something that's undervalued that they think they could sell at another venue for more money, or back in the old days, they'd buy in one corner of the room and take it to the other corner of the room and sell it for more. It's amazing. But again, you got to have an eye. You can't, it's hard to be able to look. You have to know your stuff. Again, knowledgeable flippers that are younger, that are getting into it, that are not using borrowed money for it. There's some good flippers out there. 314B was the feedback contest. Yeah, not a contest per se. I just wanted to do a little bit of a call out that what do you want to see more of? What's not been covered yet? And then what are your favorite episodes? And that third question, again, the only way I'm going to know if your favorite is one of the other people's favorite is if I look and see of those episodes in the first year, which ones do the best in in the month of October. And again, many of these people, I've gotten some great responses, and so keep them coming. But what it will generate is some episodes that will either be with some other guests or the person that gave the feedback will be on. So I'm really looking forward to that. So not too late for you to tell me and promote your favorite episodes. 315 election concerns. It's what's on I read the sports page, but I read the front page too. And very troubling what's going on in our country in many ways. What the 12 ranked election concerns from the Pew Research Council. Voting matters, and it really can affect our industry. And so I encourage you to vote. 316, it's the actual exact day and almost moment from 24 years before when I had a heart attack early on a Sunday morning. So the episode dropped on that exact day, and I brought in Claire and Jeff, my sister and brother-in-law, they're there at the time, and just to get their perspectives. And I guess I knew, I'd heard most of it, but just hearing it again, 24 years later, little melancholy. Those were different days. And again, prayers of many in the hobby. I was miraculously revived. So, thank you, for those of you that are around. And, hopefully I'll be around for a lot longer to do some more episodes unpacking this wonderful and slightly complicated hobby. 317 was, again, out of 1,000 episodes, if a couple of them deal with my mom or my dad, forgive me, but I got a great mom. And so I just had a back and forth with my sister, who was my first full-time employee and one of the presidents of the company. And so again, well respected in the industry and had a lot of contact with a lot of dealers. But a lot of what my sister got and I got was from my mom, and all I got was from my mom and my dad. So I'll do something for my dad. But it was my mom's 95th birthday. I had lunch with her. And my dad too. 318 finally was the Bob Gibson tribute. Again, we've lost Kaline, Seaver, Brock, Gibson, now Whitey Ford. I have a close friend that's from St. Louis, and he just literally was in mourning because Gibson was such a hero and such an iconic St. Louis Cardinal, and he was from St. Louis. So thanks, everybody. Enjoy thinking back over the episodes. If you missed some, you can check them out. And I'm onward and upward for the next 20 and on my way to 1,000 or more. We'll see. So thanks, everybody. Have a great day, and I will be back again tomorrow.